By 1946, fighting Nazis in Germany was over, but in America, it was far from it. The Ku Klux Klan was bleeding members at the time, but they had already come back from much worse. Their last comeback came from expanding their hatred from anti-black racism to basically any minority. And then, Superman beat the shit out of them. On the radio. When I heard they adapted that serial into a graphic novel, I was expecting a fun, bombastic Superman adventure. Instead, I might have found the most touching comic I've ever read. This is Superman at his most human and his most necessary. This is Superman Smashes the Klan. Now, obviously, the KKK is no physical match for Superman, so the book wisely pulls out and considers the true conflict to be one of ideas. The idea here being, do you embrace being different? This is mainly shown through the Lee family, the protagonist who just moved from Chinatown to Metropolis. Like many immigrants, there's an immediate pressure to fit into broader American life. And the author Luen Yang, being an Asian immigrant himself, lends the story such a great sense of personality. The Lee children are great examples of this. Tommy is taking up baseball and instantly making new friends, while Roberta is having a lot more of a tough time with the transition. Yang knows that being an immigrant isn't just tough because evil people will burn crosses, although we will get there. It's also the psychological pressure to erase yourself, to be the good, normal American. Let's talk about tone. One of the biggest strengths of this graphic novel is how I can recommend it to pretty much anybody. And while it does deal with these intense topics like white supremacy, it never feels overbearing with dread. This balance of levity and fear is hugely impressive. I genuinely think that this could teach kids empathy, which is kinda amazing. Like when the KKK kicks the story off by burning a cross in the Lee's front yard, it's kinda goofy and absurd, but it also doesn't undercut from the overall vibe. It's an extremely fine line, and it's pretty amazing the comic can maintain this balance for the entire duration. Very rarely on the channel do I get to read writing this good. This is, for lack of a better term, literature. Take this moment where Roberta sees some of her old friends from Chinatown, and it's super uncomfortable. Because not only does she not fit in with native metropolitans, she's not the same as those old friends anymore either. It's so clearly based on Yang's lived experiences, and it feels so authentic as a result. The last thing I want to say before we talk about the Klan Buster himself is the pacing is so good. Pages will just fly by. If you're reading this just for Superman, you're kind of missing the point. There's a lot of not Superman in this story, and as a result, I think it's a great recommendation for people who don't really read comics that much. Superman's scope is pretty dang small, and in some ways that's really refreshing. When he shows up in scenes, there's a real weight to them since every other character, aside from his parents in the flashback, is just a normal human. However, I don't really think he was prioritized in this story. He has two very clear conflicts here, the Klan and his identity as an alien immigrant. I do wish that he got to do more cool shit. His culmination of accepting his Kryptonian origin is learning how to fly, and I just think that's like the bare minimum for a Superman. His design is incredibly plain, and while I'll get to the art a bit later, he just doesn't feel as distinct as he did in For All Seasons. This is a minor gripe though, because Superman's core character is him slowly realizing he's a lot like Roberta and Tommy Lee. Superman as an immigrant is such an obvious theme to us, but it's really done to perfection here. He struggles with reconciling his extraterrestrial identity with the humans that he's loved for his whole life, and the scenes between him and the Lees are some of the best in the whole book. Clark's flashbacks to his childhood pretending to be a normal kid is expertly contrasted with the Lees pretending not to have their Chinese roots. The main vehicle for this is Superman's parents, who show up looking a lot more alien than usual to symbolize his otherness. So yeah, embrace your perspective, be your unique self. So much stuff I cover on the channel either has no deep message or a really sad one, so it's just really refreshing to like just read something and just feel so good. It's time to talk about white supremacy. The Klan are the antagonists, but they're by no means the emotional focus. Obviously, we all hate these guys. They should be really easy to write as a result. But I think what makes the Grand Scorpion, who is the main adversary, such a great villain is he's so grounded and focused. He's not trying to take over the world, he just wants to terrorize this Asian family, and that's somehow even more terrifying. The villain that really takes the cake though is the Grand Scorpion's nephew, Chuck. Chuck is the same age as Tommy and is initially hateful when Tommy takes his job as the starting pitcher. However, after the Klan burns the cross on the Lee's front yard, Chuck, on some level deep down, knows the Klan is wrong and hateful. He's torn between his compassion and his desire to make his uncle proud of him. Chuck, to me, is by far the most compelling character in this story. It would be so easy to tell a story where 100% of the Klansmen are 100% evil, but having Chuck spawns so many interesting conflicts. How do you break the cycle of hatred? How can you possibly be forgiven for such cruel and inhumane acts? Should those people even be redeemed in the first place? Superman and Kryptonite are here, sure, but the absolute treat that is this comic are the nuanced ways that it portrays hate. There are 3 ways the book primarily shows hate. The first is misguided hate. Again, this is mainly shown through Chuck. Chuck's hate is masquerading in nature because it stems from the same feeling of belonging that the Lees have, only swap out Metropolis with your evil KKK uncle. And when Chuck realizes his mistake, Tommy's forgiveness of him is equally important to this story. Yes, Superman smashes the Klan, but it's so much more than that. This is about smashing the perversive disease of vitriol. The book is clear that only by true acceptance can we wash away misguided hate. But the story isn't naive enough to say that all bigots can be redeemed, and that brings us into the second type of hate. True hate. The Grand Scorpion is consistently shown the error of his ways to the point when he learns at the end that the KKK is basically a giant scam. But yet, he cannot separate himself from this victim complex. His white supremacy is forever glued to who he is as a person. And towards the end of the story, he is very clearly willing to die for it, and it's almost heartbreaking if it wasn't so cathartic. Some anger just cannot be extinguished. The last form of hate in Superman Smashes the Klan is internal hate, and it's my personal favorite. I shouldn't say that. Throughout this comic, Roberta, Tommy, and Superman are not only faced with the external threat of white supremacy, but the internal pressure to erase their authentic selves. In Superman's case, it's actually very literal. He's repressing a lot of his powers in order to come across as more human. This culminates in when the KKK puts a bomb in Tommy's school. Superman, who has never used his X-ray vision before, has no idea how to fix it, and it actually goes off. And on the surface, you might mistake this for just a standard action romp, but you peel back and you get so many layers. I think it's a really powerful message that if you switch off the ways that make you different, you're internalizing the goals of the Klan themselves. Unfortunately, the only thing that doesn't feel human in this story is the art. I would say this is probably my only notable complaint. Panel design is like the bare minimum. Everything is framed very similarly at like the eye level, and I don't need like a bunch of Dutch angles, but it would really do a lot to make these sequences a little bit less stiff. There's next to no environmental storytelling, which is a huge missed opportunity. It's also lit very statically. There's few interesting shadows or light. There are definitely times when it wakes up and you see a really beautiful spread, but overall the majority of it is just too dang flat for me. I said it in other videos where I don't like when comics look like screenshots of a good animated movie, but this looks like screenshots of a bad animated movie. And it really sucks because the writing is A1. They have that shit on lockdown. I just wished I liked looking at it as much as I did reading it. This last section, I want to talk about things that didn't bother me per se, but I think could affect your enjoyment if you want to pick this up. If you want your comics to be bombastic thrills, there's not really that many awesome action sequences. You generally get one action sequence per like 50 pages, sometimes more, and that's about half of what a usual comic I've read has. Even though this is meant for all ages, it does have kind of like a PG-13 vibe. If you enjoy something like The Last Airbender or Toy Story 3, you're totally fine, but if you want something distinctly adult and gritty, I'm not sure this is for you. Superman Smashes the Klan has a stellar third act. It's full of payoff, closure and answered a lot of my earlier concerns. Superman gets a ton more character development. The scene where he gets his first motivation to become Superman from this strong man in the circus is genuinely moving. I think heart-to-hearts like this are just so refreshing given the overall themes of identity. It just works so well. And the circus being this place for people like Clark with atypical traits is storytelling genius. Every scene in this last act is brimming with emotion, like Chuck here when he cries out asking why his family is so evil. It's such a great way to show that hate is a learned trait and as a result can be unlearned. And it just builds so naturally into Superman showing the Klan who's boss. And while it definitely should not have been Roberta to say this, Superman's moment when he realizes he can fly is so earned. And the line that you're afraid not to be called Superman is really clever to show his dual identity. And since I shat on Krypton last video, I do totally see how this is a great way to use it in a story. It's much more compelling to me now. There is a little bit of a tacked on plot about how the Klan is robbing its members, but I can explain. So a huge part of the original serial was Stetson Kennedy's work going undercover in the KKK. He exposed their rituals, their code words, their silly names, and their embezzlement. And that was a huge part of the original serial. So I think Yang kept that to tie back to the original serial, but if you don't have that prior context, it does read a little awkwardly. But it's all worth it in the end to see Chuck finally break the cycle of hatred and Superman embrace his authentic self. I do not need to explain how relevant this story is. I just don't think I've read a story that appeals on this many levels. It's just so pleasant. I just feel good. But you guys all know, there's one more thing we gotta do. We gotta rate this something bitch. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed and let me know in the comments which comics I should or shouldn't do next. I try to reply to every single one. There's actually some research that claims the original serial prevented a third revival of the Ku Klux Klan, and if that's true, I don't see how I could give Superman Smashes the Klan any less than a 10 out of 10. Our first 10 in 7 months. The art did make me think twice about it, but I don't know. I just feel so much better now. Have a good one. Peace.